We have John Gonzalez of TheRinger.com on the line. Evening, John.
Hey, how are you?
Great. So, Wildcard Weekend threw up its fair share of drama. We had Houston losing to the Colts, 21 points to 7. We had the Cowboys beating Seattle, 24-22. We had LA Chargers beating Baltimore, 23-17. And then, I think the game or the moment which has left the longest mark in the memory, Philadelphia Eagles, 16, Chicago Bears, 15. Final kick of the game, the double doink, I hear they're calling it.
Yeah, tough one for Cody Parkey, although everybody in Philadelphia sends their regards and they're appreciative of it.
So, poor old Cody had a kick from 43 yards out with 10 seconds left to win the game, and he managed to hit the upright and the crossbar. It hit the upright and fell down on the crossbar. Could have went either way and bounced out. And I thought to myself as I watched, geez, that's unlucky. And then American television quickly showed me a montage of all of Cody's misses this season. And I thought, well, maybe he's just not very good at kicking.
I feel bad for Cody Parkey. He's a former Philadelphia Eagle. He's a former a lot of things. But to lose to his former team that way in that situation is a tough one. It did get tipped, in fairness to him, but I think that he was probably in his head a little bit with that kick because they called the timeout right beforehand, and that's sort of a 50-50 proposition on whether it's going to affect the kicker. But clearly, with everything that's happened with him this year, it did bother him a little bit.
So explain that. Icing the kicker is what we're talking about here.
Yeah, I mean, there's different statistics on whether or not it works. Some coaches don't even bother because, again, it's basically a 50-50 proposition if you decide to call that timeout. I'm of the mind that, if at the end of the game, if you still have a timeout, you might as well take a shot. They called the timeout right as he was kicking it the first time, and it went through. And then clearly Cody had some more time to think about all the other kicks he's bounced off various crossbars and uprights this year and got in his head a little bit.
Yeah, so it's as you said, it's not even a practice that everybody goes in for, but right as the ball is thrown back and the kicker is lining up to kick it, they'll call a timeout so that effectively the kicker has to go again?
Yeah, they have to start it all over again, and it gives him some time, the kicker, to think about it. I mean, it's a big pressure situation. You're in the playoffs. You're at home. You're against your former team. Can you do it again?
Yeah.
Some guys have that sort of mental fortitude where it doesn't bother them at all, and other guys, I think it's natural enough where you'd sit there and you'd think, okay, I got to do this again on national television.
I don't know how much it's debated either way. Are any kickers of the opinion that it actually helps them to get a second go at it?
Some guys like Adam Vinatieri have said, hey, if you want me to do it again, I'll just think more about the conditions and I'll line it up better. And, I've got more time now. I'm not rushing out onto the field. It kind of calms me down. Other guys, though, I think, again, you have a little bit more time to think about the magnitude and the ramifications of make versus miss.
The fragility of the kicker's position is worth maybe just touching on. Generally, they are the lowest paid players in the roster. They might get a measly $1 million a year. They get fired quite a bit. I saw, the Minnesota coach, Mike Zimmer, sacked his rookie kicker, and he was asked, was it an easy decision? He said, yeah, it's pretty easy. And I saw Reggie Bush as well this week. He was on around the NFL Twitter show. He said, I don't feel bad for the kickers. I don't, because you have one job, literally. So it seems like nobody really thinks all that much of the kickers, and if they miss more than one or two, basically they're in big trouble.
Yeah, it's tough, and I'm going to do that, everything's relative, and I'll put it in air quotes, but it's a tough spot for kickers because, yes, if you do miss, Reggie's right, it's your one job. You had one job to do, and if you don't, there's plenty of guys out there that they're happy to recycle. Cody Parkey's a really good example of it. He's bounced around from team to team for years now because kickers are constantly getting turned over. If you miss a couple, you could be out tomorrow. The Chargers are a good example of that. They've had kicker troubles for a long time, and then all of a sudden they found this rookie who has been pretty good for them, and he was great against the Ravens in Wildcard Weekend. So you tend to see a lot of turnover with kickers, and in the locker rooms especially, like what you heard from Reggie Bush is like pretty prevalent. Players who aren't kickers tend not to respect kickers.
Okay, so you may turn up as a kicker at Reggie Bush's team, and he may not even bother to learn your name, and then at the end of the season when you leave, he will not say goodbye to you, and that could be the way it is.
That is pretty common. Yeah, okay. I think that there's a lot. You've seen it's kind of cliquey in locker rooms where you have like the regular position players hang out with each other, and then you've got the specialists, the punter, the kicker. Sometimes, if you've got a random holder or a long snapper, they'll kind of hang out together, and it's almost like an individual team within a team.
Are there any examples of very high-profile kickers? I'm thinking like if there's a billboard or outside the stadium where they have a giant poster of 3 or 4 players. Are there any kickers who feature on those billboards or those 3 or 4 players?
I can't think of many. I mean, I mentioned Vinatieri before. He's a Hall of Famer. I think, like, as kickers go, he's probably the most respected kicker, certainly right now in the NFL, maybe of all time. Janikowski has been in the league for a long time, too, so I think that he carries a certain amount of respect just because of longevity. But in general, they tend to be pretty disposable.
Okay. So this was, look, everybody was talking about this game. You might explain to us the Nick Foles, Carson Wentz situation for the Eagles. Nick Foles, jog people's memory, but he's having, would seem thus far, similar enough season to what was an extraordinary season last year. He's the the backup quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah,
it's remarkable. I mean, in Philadelphia, to give you a little context, forever has had some pretty fairly good quarterbacks. I mean, they had Randall Cunningham and Ron Jaworski before that, and after that, Donovan McNabb took them to a bunch of conference championships. But for whatever reason, Philadelphia has always been enamored with the backup, and as these backups have gone, Nick Foles has obviously been the best backup in Eagles history, won a Super Bowl for them. And there's this sort of groundswell in Philadelphia where people are starting to talk openly about, hey, maybe they should just go ahead and trade Carson Wentz and get something back in return and keep Nick Foles, which I think is kind of crazy because Carson Wentz is extremely talented. He's much younger. And while Nick Foles has been really good for the Eagles and while he did get them a Super Bowl and he's been excellent and there's all this momentum, he almost retired. I mean, there's a scenario where he almost didn't play last year. So it's kind of crazy to see what's happening with him.
I saw one of the players saying they have a Nick Foles shrine in the locker room.
Yeah.
Candles and pictures, and there's like a vigil for Nick Foles.
Yeah, Chris Long put that together kind of as a joke, little tongue-in-cheek, but maybe not that much. And I was wondering, like, imagine if you're Carson Wentz and you see that, right? Yeah. Like, they really like him. They really like Nick Foles a lot.
And is Carson Wentz just objectively, any neutral could see them either way, Carson Wentz is by far the better player?
Again, this is sort of a debate, right? Because I think personally, if you're just going by skill set and how old he is and what he forecasts to be, yes, I would say in a vacuum, Carson Wentz would be better. But the results have been there for Nick Foles. And a couple of years ago when Nick Foles was the starter for the Eagles before they ended up trading him and he went to he ended up with the Rams and a bunch of other teams. He had statistically one of the best seasons in NFL history. So there's a case to be made that, results-wise, Nick Foles might be the better guy. He certainly has produced for them.
And is Wentz out for the rest of the season?
It looks like it, yeah. I can't imagine that they would rush him back. And it's going to be a tall order for them to get past the Saints this weekend anyway, so I'd be shocked if we see Wentz this season.
Okay. Anything else before we look ahead to next weekend? Anything else from Wildcard Weekend that grabbed you?
The Eagles getting past the Bears was crazy. I can't believe they're still alive. They're charmed. They're still charmed.
Okay. So we're down to the last 8. What is the standout game to look out for this weekend if there's a casual NFL fan going to watch one?
Well, I think not to continue to harp on the Philadelphia Eagles, but I think you've got the best team in the NFC at home, the Saints, who have just been absolutely killer at home with Drew Brees. They're a totally different team when they're playing in a dome on the turf. And the last time they played the Eagles in that stadium this season, right around Thanksgiving, they smacked them. It was 48-7. The Eagles were never in that game. But Carson Wentz played in that game, not Nick Foles. And now you've got the defending Super Bowl champions at the Saints, the number 1 seed in the NFC. That's awfully interesting. I think the Rams against the Cowboys is going to be a good game as well. So the NFC looks like it's going to be a fun weekend.
Talking about the Saints, Drew Brees turns 40 next Tuesday, I think, and is showing no signs of slowing up, if anything, getting better.
Yeah, as a fellow 40-year-old, I love it. I like to see, it gives me hope that maybe life isn't over yet.
I'm not really sure you can bask in his reflected glory. I think it's more about Drew Brees than 40-year-olds.
It's all vicarious, and I'm claiming victory as well for 40-year-olds everywhere.
Okay. So Saints are looking in good shape. What about the Patriots? How are they shaping up? They're going to host the Chargers.
Well, there's another 41-year-old in Tom Brady who he's still out there being Tom Brady. And I think that skill position player-wise, they're probably not as good as they've been in the past. They don't really Edelman hasn't been as good. Gronkowski hasn't been as good. I'm not crazy about their backfield. Their secondary has been pretty good as far as the defense goes, but they're still the Patriots, right? They get into the playoffs. They're the number 2 seed, and you think all of a sudden, how could you possibly count them out? Because every year, for whatever reason, the Patriots end up advancing because they're the Patriots. So I think it would be foolish for anybody to count them out.
And have they recovered from similar-ish form in previous seasons to go on and win the Super Bowl?
Yeah, they've had years where obviously they've been the number 1 seed and by far and away the favorite. But I think that there's been other years too where they get into the playoffs and you don't expect them to do much, and then you look around at the rest of the AFC and you realize, oh right, the rest of these teams don't have nearly the same playoff experience. They don't have nearly the same cachet. They certainly don't have Tom Brady, who's going to countless Super Bowls and won a bunch and is a Hall of Famer. And the same with Bill Belichick, who's one of the great coaches of all time. And I think that there's sort of an intimidation factor about having to play the Patriots in the postseason.
So if the Saints are largely everybody's favourites, then it's some combination of the Rams and Kansas City Chiefs and maybe the Patriots as well lurking behind them, but a little bit, a reasonable amount behind them in how people are seeing the pecking order?
Yeah, I think that that's probably right. I mean, I think the Chiefs have a really good shot. They've been fantastic offensively all year. The defense probably isn't as good. And obviously they lost Hunt, their running back, for various reasons, off the field issues, and they have to sort of make up for that. But I have a soft spot for Andy Reid as the former coach of the Eagles. He's been trying to win a Super Bowl for a very, very long time, and he gets into the postseason, and various issues have felled him so far. I'd like to see him win one before he retires. I think he deserves it. Okay.
Listen, John, always good to have you on. John Gonzalez of TheRinger.com. Thanks a million.
Thanks. Enjoyed it.